First of all, as it relates to this whole issue about buying performance, can a company buy performance? Let me start off by framing this issue with a client that came to us several years ago that is really vivid in my mind because it relates directly to this issue. This client essentially had developed a philosophy that they were going to buy performance by paying high salaries to the people that they attracted. So they decided to pay salaries at about the 90th percentile of market pay, and their theory was, if I pay more than my competitors, then I'm going to attract better talent. And if I attract better talent, then that talent is obviously going to produce better results because they're the better talent. Well, as you might imagine, what happened was that didn't happen. As a result, the CEO was frustrated. There was confusion, didn't understand why, given that effort, that he wasn't seeing better results. And there's a real critical issue that came to the surface for the CEO as it relates to the issues that we're going to talk about today. But to bottom line it for just a second, can a company buy performance? Well, in a word, the answer is no. You really don't buy performance per se, but that doesn't mean that compensation orchestrated correctly doesn't have some impact on performance and shouldn't be tied to performance in the way that you organize your efforts in that regard. And that's what we want to clarify. Well, why didn't it work for this client? Well, number one, it's not about so much how much we're paying somebody, rather it's more about how we're paying. What form is compensation taking, and what is that communicating to our employees about what's important? We don't ignore the how much. In fact, a lot of our work centers on doing market pay studies for company, both as relates to salaries and total compensation. But it's a beginning point, not an ending point, as to how we think about compensation. And here's really what we need to start out with as kind of a proper view of the role compensation is supposed to be playing. Number one, it's a strategic tool. It's one of many tools that we have to impact the way our employees think about the future of the business. And we'll talk about how it interacts with other tools that we have at our disposal as well. Number two, it's not a one-dimensional issue. We can't just focus on salaries. We can't just focus on incentives and think we're all done. It's multifaceted. It's multidimensional in terms of how different aspects of what we do from a compensation standpoint interact with the total reward strategy that we employ to get the results that we're looking for. So then the proper role of compensation, number one, it should help us define certain roles in the organization and what's expected of people in those roles. And as a result of those expectations, what are the outcomes that we're looking for from that role? And if those outcomes are achieved, how are we defining the financial partnership that's associated with those outcomes? It's a very different approach than thinking in terms of just salaries and incentive plans as an example, and we'll expand on that in just a minute. The other thing that a proper use of compensation should do is it should communicate certain things. Most critically, it should communicate to employees what's important to the organization. What are the results we're looking for? What's the outcomes? Where's this all heading? What's our business engine, our business model, and the revenue drivers of this organization? What are the leverage points in that? How else are we going to go about making sure that we create in their minds the emphasis we have on their roles and what needs to play out? Then secondly, what are the priorities? And priorities have to do, well, what has to happen this year or even this quarter or perhaps even this month, but what's happening long term, and what's the balance between those things that we need to strike? And if we don't think that the way we pay people is communicating something, then we're wrong. We can't sit in meetings and communicate certain things that are important, then pay people in a way that's at odds with those priorities. So to just get a kind of broad view here at looking at kind of the financial framework that needs to be constructed compensation-wise, if we want to build this kind of unified financial vision for growing the business, let's start over here to the right of this graphic that we're looking at. Let's assume for a minute that you are considering yourself to be a growth organization and you want to have meaningful growth over the next X period of time. Well, for that growth to occur, the organization really needs to achieve what we call wealth multiplier status. Wealth multiplier status means that there is an underlying understanding that as the company moves forward, that all stakeholders involved with that growth are going to participate in the value that's going to be created. So certainly the business itself is going to participate in that growth, and a large amount of capital is going to go to fuel that growth. Shareholders are, and also particularly key employees, as well as other employees in the organization, are going to participate in that wealth multiple. And if that wealth multiple is occurring at a high enough level, then there's going to become a self-perpetuation to what's occurring in the success of that business. Well, if we want to do that properly, then let's back into where that growth comes from. For growth to occur, what has to really emerge in the organization is what we call a culture of confidence. A culture of confidence is what Jim Collins in his book Good to Great referred to as kind of the flywheel effect, where we achieve such a pattern of winning in the marketplace that all of our employees are completely involved with it. They know what's going to happen. They know how to make it happen. The business model is so finely tuned. The leverage points are so clearly articulated that people know exactly what their roles are and what's expected of them and how to achieve that. Well, what does that culture of confidence emerge from? Well, it emerges from getting sustained results within an organization. A business that sustains results over an extended period of time starts seeing that manifest in the feedback that comes back from the marketplace. That's where the culture of confidence emerges from. Sustained results then come from what? Well, they come from people consistently executing what they're supposed to execute. And when that execution occurs systematically enough and constantly enough and over an extended period of time, there is a sustaining effort occurring, and therefore the results are demonstrating that. Well, where does execution come from? Well, execution comes from people understanding where their focus needs to be and what the proper focus is. Well, one of the ways that we create that proper focus is to make sure that we have in place a compensation game plan that communicates very clearly what we expect of people and the outcomes that we're looking for. And that compensation game plan pays attention to two elements, a structural element and a mindset element. Structural element are what most people think about when they construct compensation programs. It's who should participate, how broadly and deeply should this compensation plan go, what's the cost of this plan, what's the basic strategy that we're employing here, how's this going to impact the productivity of our people, and so forth. Just as important, however, are what we call mindset issues, and that is what kind of clarity are we creating in the minds of particularly our key people, our key producers, as relates to outcomes that we're looking for, the vision of the company, where we're headed, what their role in that is, how important their unique abilities are to that. How much of a sense of partnership are we communicating about our feeling about wanting them to share in this wealth multiple that we're going to all create if, in fact, we build this culture of confidence that we've been talking about. And then finally, what level of engagement are we seeing or going to see as a result of this compensation program we're going to roll out? So compensation game plan is designed to address all of that, and it's tied directly to the business model and reinforces what the business model is. That business model is always paying attention to what the vision of the company is, what the strategy is, all of which are headed towards this growth multiple that the organization is trying to achieve.